afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Marty McGann. Welcome to the 2023 All-In Leadership Forum. We appreciate the additional steps you took to be with us today and the change of theater to necessitate the other activities that were taking place. But we very much welcome you here. We thank you for working your way to be here tonight. We're excited to host this session and the reception to follow as a way to deepen collaboration among public and private sectors to accelerate growth and prosperity for Greater Cleveland. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Craig Hassel to stage. Craig Hassel was tapped to lead the next act of Playhouse Square when he joined as president and CEO earlier this year. This followed his time leading the Royal Adelbert Hall, a major destination in London, and experiences across Europe and Australia. Thank you.
My task is very simple. It's simply to welcome you to this amazing theatre. You're in one of the largest theatres in the country and one of the largest theatre districts in the world, and it's in Cleveland, Ohio. You should be very proud of that. So I'd like to especially thank Beiju for hosting this event here at Playhouse Square. GCP chose to come here today, which is great for Playhouse Square, and also it'll be great for you. You have an amazing panel of speakers, an extraordinary audience. I hope you come back many, many times and see many more shows here at Playhouse Square. We're just over 100 years old, but we're holding it together. I think we're doing okay. And I came here from London to run this extraordinary institution, this extraordinary district, and I'm so proud to be here, and you should be very proud as Clevelanders of what you have here. Have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig. It is now my pleasure to introduce Lorenzo Gonsalves. Lorenzo has served as chairman and president and CEO of Cleveland Cliffs for nearly 10 years and is a GCP board member. Lorenzo has led a major strategic turnaround of his 175-year-old company. This included a financial turnaround, a focus on growth and an acquisition for his company, and now they're the largest flat-rolled steel company in North America. Thank you, Lorenzo, for being here today.
Hello. Good early evening. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, with the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and have the opportunity to bring together a group of leaders that are in the business of bringing Cleveland back to where Cleveland belongs and bringing Ohio to where Ohio belongs. We are in the middle of a huge transformation when manufacturing is back, being the backbone of the economy of this country, and that is in the Midwest. We're going to have a great conversation here tonight, and it's my honor to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Jon Husted. Lieutenant Governor Husted is a former Secretary of State, is a former Speaker of the Ohio House of Representatives. He's a former state senator. And more than anything, he's the one that has been bringing a lot of things that are important for the DeWine Husted administration to bring Ohio to where Ohio belongs. He's a person that's attentive to detail. Last time, Lieutenant Governor Husted and I were talking, he was talking with me about not nuclear power that's so involved with, not with the development of things that will continue to bring wealth to Ohioans in general, but he was talking about how important it is for you, Lawrence, and Cleveland Cliffs, child care. That's so important that the biggest concern that the Lieutenant Governor had in his mind at that moment to talk to me was about the people. If you care about the people will care about everybody else. And that's the type of member of the government at the importance of the Lieutenant Governor Husted is concerned about. So, it's with great honor that I'm going to introduce Lieutenant Governor John Husted.
I think we got that. We got it. Great.
I'm not sure if you introduced me. I'm Paul.
Did not need to introduce. This is Paul Dolan. Paul is the chairman of the GCP. I'm honored to be a board member of the GCP together with Paul. And for the ones that don't know, he is the chairman of the Guardians. They did not win yesterday. Yesterday only the Cavs beat the Nuggets.
But we didn't
and
lose
the
it.
Browns beat the Steelers. And by the way, Cleveland is beating Pittsburgh.
All
Just
right.
to let you know.
Hard to beat that. Let me also add that I'm a longtime member of the Playhouse Square Board, and I'm very proud of that association, very proud of what it means to this community, and it's really cool to be on stage here because I've never done that before. I think that maybe John and I should break into song and dance, but the artistic value would be very low, although the entertainment value might be high. But I think we're going to spare all of you that. So let me just start, John, by welcoming you here to Cleveland, or I should say welcome you back, because you are a regular here. And I want to thank you for the partnership that you and the governor have formed with this community, and really for the strong state budget that you helped produce that includes a lot of really key tools that have helped our region prosper. I think we'll talk about that in the minutes ahead. But I think it's really fair to say that your administration and Jobs Ohio have really been instrumental in some of the business development efforts that are taking place in Greater Cleveland. And just by way of example, it's maybe the most obvious one is just to go down the street, Euclid Avenue, and see what's happening on Public Square with the Sherwin-Williams building. That stayed in Cleveland in part because of the help that you and your administration provided, and it really is important to our future in the global economy. And then if you look out broader, whether it's the battery plant that's down the Youngstown Warren area or the EV expansion that Ford is going to hopefully will undergo. Those are really important industries that could shape the future economy of this region and really of this country, and your support in getting us there is really greatly appreciated. So let me start maybe my questions by noting that when you and Governor DeWine took office, you said, and you've said it repeatedly since, this is Ohio's time, that, and someone who's lived in Ohio all my life, we haven't heard that a whole lot, but it certainly rings true today. We appreciate, the All Ohio Futures Fund, the Brownfield funds, the expansion of Jobs Ohio in the recent budget. So can you talk a little bit about what it means this is Ohio's time? How are business interests across the country and even across the globe looking at Ohio, and what are our needs, particularly as it relates to sites and mega sites across the state? And then I'm layering on questions here, but they're all related. And really, what should Greater Cleveland be focusing on?
Well, thank you for the question and all the kind thoughts from the introduction and the things that you've said about the governor and my work. Let me just say, I love doing this. It's a real pleasure to do public service, to try to make the world, the state, our communities a better place. But what I think the definition of Ohio's time is, and for those of you who've lived here basically our whole lives, is that it wasn't always that way. I mean, we had a tough go. And I give credit, about 30 years ago when Governor Voinovich became governor, Ohio really started to do this private-public partnership to bring things back, whether it was workers' compensation reform, tort reform, tax reform, focusing on things that would make us more competitive with other states. And so we went from being a bad state to do business during a time when we had trade deals and globalization that really hollowed out our economy. So we fought our way back. That's why it feels so good right now to see this, because our children and grandchildren are not going to have to leave Ohio to find opportunities. My family had to leave Ohio 30 years ago because the economy wasn't good. And now our children and grandchildren are not going to experience that. We have more jobs than people. We have the most jobs right now in the history of the state of Ohio. The most in so many sectors. We just announced last Friday construction jobs. Most there's ever been. I think it's like 250,000 construction jobs across the state of Ohio. We've had 54 companies move from the coast to Ohio over the last 4 years, soon to be 55, we hope. And we are the heart of it all again. That's what I mean by the heart of it all. What do I mean is that we make the things in Ohio that people need to live and thrive across the globe. And I say it like this: from the food you eat, to the cars you drive, to the trucks that deliver it, to the airplanes that fly, now to the cloud that connects us all and the chips that power our devices, that's Ohio. And the world needs us, and America needs what we do for our economic and national security. That has never been truer than it is today. And we're just in the beginning of this phase. It's going to grow. In preparation for today, I did a little check-in on Intel. The most supply chain companies in Ohio are located for Intel in Northeast Ohio. It's a whole new industry that we can grow out. And it's really exciting about what we can do. Now, I will say this, that because of interest rates and some uncertainty in the economy, that decision-making tree that when we talk with companies who are looking at Ohio is slowed. Not that they're going somewhere else, they just have not made their decisions, but things are going in the right direction. And so for Cleveland, as I see this, to your final part of that question, is that it's making sure that the sites are ready, that the local communities want to embrace development, that they want to embrace the idea of housing, that they want to embrace the necessary needs for energy and infrastructure and all of the things that are necessary to locate these new developments and new companies that want to move. And that's the most important thing, to be ready and to have the workforce and the welcoming regulatory environment on all fronts to take advantage of this momentum.
Yeah, I mentioned early on the key tools that you've provided for us, and I think some of those tools relate to the work that you just referred to, getting sites ready, I think it's the All Ohio Futures Fund.
All Ohio Future Fund, yeah.
Brownfields funds, and those all are positioning us to maybe have the next Intel or something comparable.
Yeah, well, in those programs, there's something for everyone. Yes, we want mega sites. The $750 million that was included in the budget is for creating those 400 or acre larger mega sites for these facilities, and I know that we're looking very aggressively about one in Lorain County. But it's also the brownfield money, the demolition money that would be there for sites in Cleveland, in places like that maybe don't have large 400 acre, but there are lots of sites that need to be prepared and can be prepared, and there are a lot of tools in the toolbox to do that.
So when you and the governor took office a few years ago, you offered us some advice, offered our community some advice. We're blessed with many different sectors who feel very passionate about the community and voice it, come down to Columbus and voicing it. But in the process, the message being heard in Columbus is that you're not aligned, and we don't really focus together. And so the message was to get our act together. And we believe we've taken that message to heart, initiated the all-in plan that hopefully you've all heard, as we've kind of brought with the whole region, the business, civic, and public leadership team together. So the question for you is, how are we doing on that front? Do you feel that we are aligned and we have that commitment across the Cleveland border? And what can we do to improve if we're not there yet?
Well, one of the things I'll always be careful in saying, Governor would say the same thing, we don't tell communities what their priorities should be. That's up to the community to decide. But it's helpful in succeeding in executing those priorities if it's a unified message. And I really believe the reason that having a unified message is so important is because it forces the community itself to get in alignment. Everybody who is important in the private and public sector to align around a strategy that you believe will drive your community forward, and then go sell it. Go to the public officials, whether those are local public officials or statewide public officials or federal officials for that matter, and say, look, we have this plan, here are the people that are behind it, here are the resources that we need to achieve it, here's what we're asking you to help with. And when that happens, you're just going to be a lot more successful, and I believe that I agree with you. I think since we had that conversation, things have improved greatly.
Oh, good. At the onset, I complimented you on the state budget, and it's really an amazing accomplishment because you achieved tax cuts across really the whole spectrum of businesses, yet we still have the resources that we've set aside for strategic development investments. So that has our attention, as it probably has everybody in the state, as to what are the plans for that. And so maybe sort of two questions is that, there are maybe what we would call transformative projects, so like those really big ones, or there are the what maybe labeled community projects, which is the work that every community needs and sees an opportunity to take care of, but maybe doesn't move the community the state in the same way. How are you looking at that sort of between transformative and community gifts? And then maybe related to that is, what are your thoughts on the process to get to that point?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to that alignment issue we just discussed. So there is funding. I mean, prosperity is a very great thing. This is why. Because when you have a growing economy, when you have full employment, when you basically have more jobs than you have people right now, that creates a lot of revenue for state government. And so you can do things like continue to improve your business climate from a tax and cost point of view, but also have the money you set aside for everything from innovation hubs to the All Ohio Future Fund or the pool of money that you're talking about, $700 million for more community-related projects. But whether they're incremental community projects or whether they're transformative will depend on the local communities in Ohio deciding that when they talk to their legislators, because this is how that process works. If you're aligned and you have a message and this is what you want to do and everybody's there and we're going to do this, then I think that you have a good chance of getting those kinds of things funded with this. But if it's splintered, everybody's going off in their own direction, I don't just mean in Cleveland, I mean in every community that in the process, then it will be a little more fractured. So the answer to that question is it just depends on what local communities bring to state government and whether they have, what kind of alignment they have as they bring their projects forward.
Great. I was hoping the answer was a domed baseball stadium. But,
a domed baseball stadium.
But yours might be a little bit better. We just have to stay all in is really what it amounts to. So, but regardless of what we build, what sites become available, I mean, I think the key to success really in a community is talent. We need to have the people to really be successful. And in this post-pandemic era and with the demographic changes, that's a challenge here in Ohio. It's a challenge nationwide, but might be a little more acute here. And the state, with your leadership, has really been focused on it. New programs such as Tech Creds, which maybe you want to spend a little more time on, have really been important in this effort. So talk to us about what's your focus right now and when it comes to workforce development. And what's the state going to do to ensure Ohio keeps pace, with this need for skilled workers?
So talent is arguably the most important issue. whenever we're having a conversation with a business who's looking at Ohio, it's always about talent. Yeah, you have to have a site, but if you can't supply the talent, they're not coming or they're not expanding. And this is not just an Ohio issue, it's a Midwestern issue, it's an American issue, it's a developed nation issue because we have demographic challenges. Americas aren't the worst. Japan, South Korea, China, a lot of developed nations around the world have these issues, and they're not all equal. Some regions within our state or in our nation, some of them have a younger, more talented workforce than others. But the communities that get this right with that public-private sector alignment are the ones that are just winning. They're just winning opportunities. And what we've done is that we've tried to help reach everybody no matter where they are in that process. Some of the things that we've really leaned in on hard are our career centers. We have a record number of students enrolled in our career centers, whether that's to be a nurse, a welder, a robotic technician, you name it. And more kids are graduating high school career ready than ever before. They're earning college credits. It's not either or. We used to have trouble with parents saying, well, I want a college track, I want a career track. Look, it's both. And you can do this at your career high schools. We just, and it's worked so well that we're full. Like a lot of these career centers are full, even though we have stagnant or declining numbers of students in that demographic. And so we just did $200 million to try to expand. I think we expanded 3,800 training opportunities across all of those things from, you name it. All of the career skills with in-demand industry credentials, we just expanded them all. And we want to do more, but that's super important. More students graduating high school, career ready, prepared for college if that's what they choose, but mostly ready for you as business people to go to work before they graduate high school. Many of them are. And then for those who didn't get that opportunity, maybe they're already out there in the workforce, we're knocking down barriers to job training with programs like TechCred. TechCred is something that was actually an idea that I had, that the governor and I fleshed out, and we started in this administration. And it allows anyone in Ohio to earn an in-demand tech credential. Employers, you pick the employee or the potential employee, you pick the skill, the in-demand credential you want them to earn, you pick the training partner, and then once they've completed it, we will reimburse you up to $2,000 for the cost of that short-term in-demand credential. Some of them come with college credits, but it is very, very popular. Manufacturing sector is using it the most, but there are, I say it like this because there's nobody in Ohio who wants to earn an in-demand tech credential. You all can do it. And every employer has access to this so that they can upskill their workforce. And this is so important that we help everybody, no matter where they are, get an opportunity for job security, higher pay, give employers the talent they need, and change the culture of education into lifelong learning, because it is. Technology is changing the nature of work faster than ever, and we have to have systems designed to respond to that. And I think that these systems are very nimble. Other systems in education are less nimble, and the ones that are the most nimble, supplying the marketplace with what the market wants, are the ones that are going to thrive. And it's just, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get this right.
Okay, so let me pivot to my business. Well, it's not really my business, but in my business. As many of you know, we relocate part of the year down to Arizona. And when we moved to Arizona, we really enter a different world. It's a world where it's brown, and it's really, really dry, and it's really, really hot. And that's not really unique to Arizona. That's a good portion of the West right now is seeing that. And in contrast to what we've got here in Ohio, where whatever you think of our climate here, we've got water. And particularly we've got Lake Erie sitting right on our doorstep here. And your administration has focused on that by developing H2 Ohio, which really serves as the foundation for the stewardship here of Lake Erie. So can you talk a little bit about what you see as the impact of Lake Erie and some of the coastal assets we have there, and what it really means for our local economy heading into the future?
H2 Ohio is something that the governor has really leaned in hard on. We're really trying to make sure that we're creating, we're protecting our resource, the water resource, particularly Lake Erie, but all of our tributaries and our lakes and streams in our state. And it really is about taking out the nitrogen and phosphorus that is largely from agriculture and water and sewer treatment facilities, and making sure that we're just protecting that resource. And so that's why we're leaning in hard with H2 Ohio and trying to make sure that we're protecting Ohio's water, because it's so valuable in many ways. Recreationally, of course, but a lot of the big mega projects that we're dealing with, I remember in the midst of the negotiation for the Intel project, they said, hey, we need 5 million gallons of water a day. We had to prove that we could deliver it. A lot of places around the country, that they didn't win, they didn't make it as far into the finals because they couldn't do that. And we have done a lot of really good things to protect the water in the Great Lakes with the Great Lakes Compact, to protect the quality of the water with H2 Ohio. And it's super important that we continue to do that and identify ways that we can leverage it for the benefit of our economy and our quality of life, because water will continue to grow in its importance in our world.
Okay. Oh,
Being here, we'll wrap
I
that
think I'm getting the
conversation
hook
there.
here.
As discreet as I could. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor, for being here. Thank you, Paul, for being here. A round of applause for our guests. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one job tonight here, that's to keep us on schedule. So I will be abrupt if I need to, but very much appreciate the Lieutenant Governor, especially considering I know a lot of folks here tonight expected to see Governor DeWine in light of the circumstances around the accident, the tragedy that happened in Tuscarawas Valley School District last week. The governor was unable to attend, but Lieutenant Governor Husted was so kind to join us in this discussion. Without further ado, I wanted to invite Mayor Bibb, our 58th mayor of the city of Cleveland, and Baiju Shah to join us on stage. Mayor Bibb, as many of you know, joins us following his 15 years in government and business and the nonprofit sector in Greater Cleveland. We've worked closely with him on our shared agenda to develop Greater Cleveland. Thank you for being here. And Baiju Shah, our president and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Partnership. Thank you.
Okay. You can kind of see why Paul Dolan could not see the sign. These lights
very dark.
These lights are very bright.
Yeah.
Very bright. But you're used to being under bright lights, Mayor.
Something like that.
That's right. So thank you for joining us here at our leadership forum. So let me start by it's you coming up on 2 years in office. Tell us a little bit about your reflections. What surprised you? What's challenged you over the last 2 years?
Well, first, I got to say happy Victory Monday in the land. Browns win, Cavs win. Excited about that?
Let's throw the Buckeyes in, too.
Exactly. It feels like 6 years, not 2. But I would say the biggest lesson I've learned over the last roughly 2 years is how many decisions of consequence you make in this job leading a major American city. And before I got elected, I knew that the job would entail a lot of major decisions of consequence. But you don't really understand the gravity of the impact of those decisions until you're in the seat. And for me, the best example came New Year's Eve, 3 days before I was sworn in, after the murder of Shane Bartek, who was killed off duty in the West Park neighborhood. And the first major decision I had to make when I took office was whether or not our administration would call his death a line of duty death. And we looked at all the facts, we looked at all the data, and we made the right call. And the weight of that decision really impacted the Bartek family in a big way, because it showed that family that the city of Cleveland supported them and that the city of Cleveland supported the men and women of our police department. And there's decisions like that every single day, whether it's how do you create more quality jobs in our neighborhoods, to being more aggressive to take down abandoned properties in our neighborhoods. And it's that kind of impact that this job has that I'm so excited to have 2 more years to continue the progress we've made since just last January.
Well, that's fantastic, and hopefully more years to come after
Yes.
that as well.
Yes.
So let's pick up a little bit on the themes that the Lieutenant Governor and Paul Dolan outlined around economic development and growth and prosperity. So I think we heard the Lieutenant Governor say, this is our time. This is our time in this region. This is our time in this state. You are at the center of what we all know is a top 20 region.
Yeah.
Still one of the largest regions in the Midwest, one of the top 20 in the entire country. Sites is important. The Lieutenant Governor talked about the big sites. You had a lot of recent announcements about sites as well as economic incentives. Tell us a little bit more about how you're viewing this opportunity in this time and what we need to be doing.
Yeah. Beju, it is so important that we as a city and a region get this moment right, because the global economic trends and conditions really fit our core strengths as a city and as a region. And I want to just paint this picture with some important context for you. First and foremost, for a long time, unfortunately, we as a city and as a region haven't had an aggressive, focused strategy in terms of growing traded sector jobs, whether it's in healthcare, biotechnology, advanced manufacturing, et cetera. And the data gives you a stark picture of what happens when we don't have a coordinated, effective strategy around this. Over the last 15 years, while the United States experienced a roughly 15% increase in traded sector job growth, Cleveland experienced a negative 5% decline. And over the same time horizon, we've lost nearly 20% of our population. But because we're seeing this new movement now, because of the president's leadership on the CHIPS and Science Act to create things in America again, we know how to make things in Ohio. We know how to make things in Cleveland. And so as a city, we've taken our largest allocation of ARPA dollars, over $50 million of American Rescue Plan investments, to take 1,000 acres of vacant land, primarily on the east side of Cleveland, and turn those 1,000 acres of vacant land into shovel-ready job sites to create good-paying jobs in our neighborhoods. And early data shows that this investment can potentially create up to 65,000 new direct and indirect jobs. And so it's so important that we have a focused strategy locally, at the region, and at the state level to make sure that we can compete for our fair share of investments, because we get those calls every week from companies who need 15 acres of land, 20 acres of land, 30 acres of land. But we haven't had the job sites ready to go. We believe we can change that right now, once and for all.
And Mayor, you've got obviously purview across the city of Cleveland, but you've also got a platform that brings the Cleveland region into national limelight. Can you talk a little bit more about how you want to represent the region as a whole, not just the city, as it relates to business attraction?
Yeah, we certainly have a major opportunity right now as we define our new comeback story coming out of the pandemic to really tell our story to the world. One thing I'm really excited about is the work that we're doing with GCP and other key stakeholders across the region to finally see real development on our waterfronts, from the riverfront in Cuyahoga River to Lake Erie. And I believe with this movement we're trying to build, we can be one of the first 2 waterfront cities in America. And there are a lot of folks excited about the fact that we have Dan Gilbert willing to invest up to $4 billion to revitalize the riverfront. The work we're doing with the Rock Hall, the Haslams, and the Science Center to really reimagine our lakefront. Having a world-class waterfront is not just about revitalizing the urban core, but it's really about showing the world that Cleveland is open and ready for business, and that we certainly know how to build and enhance our strengths as a city.
Let's talk a little bit about the waterfront. So the Lieutenant Governor said alignment is critical at the local level. Be interested in your perceptions of that alignment, not just as it relates to the core-to-shore strategy, but just more broadly between the business community, civic partners, elected officials across the region. Where are we? Where do we need to be?
We have a lot more work to do. I remember when I got in office last year, both the governor and lieutenant governor were very frank with me and said for a long time, we as a city and as a region would go down to Columbus with 20 different asks, and no one really knew what the priorities were. And we've been really trying to do a better job since I took office of making sure we're all singing from the same hymn book as a city and as a region. And that has, in some cases, rubbed some folks the wrong way because we really haven't had a traffic cop at the city or county level trying to galvanize how do we go down to Columbus with a unified voice to make sure we're not just getting our fair share, but more than our fair share back to Cleveland and back to Cuyahoga County. So it's so important, from the chamber to Team NEO to Jumpstart to the foundation community to our CDCs and other key stakeholders, that we are all aligned around the same core priorities, because that's been the Columbus way for a long time. And we have a lot more work to do here in Cleveland to get there, but I think with the right political will, with the right sense of shared accountability, and the right sense of humility, we can do that once and for all right up here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Well, and that's culture change, right?
Yeah.
It's driving culture change throughout our civic community. We call it All In. That's the Cleveland way. How do we get aligned around these key priorities, then speak with one voice in Columbus? You also have spent quite a bit of time building relationships in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Talk about what that means for us in Washington, D.C. with this unprecedented federal opportunity to power projects like Core to Shore.
Well, just 2 hours ago, I was trying to pitch the administrator for Amtrak to pick Cleveland as a potential hub. So excited about that hopeful opportunity. But it is so important, particularly right now as we approach the 2024 election, that we really spend the right level of time in DC advocating for our core priorities as a city and as a region. There's an historical amount of federal investment coming, from the bipartisan infrastructure bill to the Inflation Reduction Act to the CHIPS Act that's going to allow us to really accelerate our expertise in the semiconductor area, being a hub to those supply chain companies. And Washington wants to invest in Cleveland. I'll never forget one of the first conversations I had with, I call him Mayor Pete, but Secretary Buttigieg at the Department of Transportation. He says, Mayor Bibb, I just got back from a mini vacation from Cleveland, and your city bleeds infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And so anytime the president or the administration gives me the opportunity to be in DC to advocate for Cleveland, I'm gonna hop on that plane and make sure I be the sales leader we need to be to make sure Cleveland gets its fair share.
That's fantastic, and we thank you for that. What do you need from the business community to support you in that effort?
Yeah. Well, Baiju, I alluded to this a little bit in my earlier comments. I'm really concerned right now that we don't have an aggressive, focused strategy quite yet when it comes to business attraction and business retention. We still have a lot more work to do. Mm-hmm. And the competition is fierce. Pittsburgh is still outcompeting us. Nashville is outcompeting us. Columbus, as you know, is outcompeting us. And I'm a very competitive guy, and I hate to lose. And I know that City Hall, historically, has not always been the best partner to drive the right kind of long-term focused economic growth we need as a city and as a region. But we want to change that. Right now, we are doing a massive overhaul of every permitting process. We want to digitize our permits. We want to make sure that we operate at the speed of business internally at City Hall. And we recognize that that work takes a lot of time. But we as a city and as a region must get laser focused about how we aggressively compete to attract new companies and retain the companies that are currently right here in our city and our region. Because if we don't have a strategy over the next 2 or 4 years, we are going to miss our moment to truly be a globally competitive city for the next generation.
Well said. And Sites is ante. That's
Yes.
what we talk about. Sites is absolutely ante to be in the game, but we then have to have a focused strategy to execute, to be able to deliver a pipeline that we can actually compete and close on
Yes.
across the region.
And I would say the residents and the business community, you have my word and my commitment that our administration, we're going to continue to work around the clock to create the right conditions for good quality job growth in our city. Because I don't believe government creates jobs, but here's what I believe. I believe government creates the right conditions for good quality jobs to thrive in our respective communities. And a smart government approach is a government that prioritizes public safety like we are. A smart government approach is one that's going to work with you to help close the digital divide. As you know, we just spent $20 million of ARPA investments to help connect families to high-speed broadband, and we've already attracted another $500 million private sector capital investment to lay fiber in every part of our city with the support of City Council. And so we are working around the clock to make this a good place to do business, but we need the business community to also be aligned to help us achieve our long-term goals.
Well, Mayor, I want to invite you to maybe give some closing remarks. What are you looking forward to over the next 2 years to accomplish in your end of your first term?
Yeah. Well, for our administration, the first year in office was really about taking stock of what was working and what wasn't working and building a long-term foundation for our tenure in office. And this second year of the second term has really been about teeing up our big priorities. Laser focused on doubling down on our core investments in public safety, helping to jumpstart the revitalization of Cleveland's southeast side, and making the big bets we're going to continue to make for the riverfront and the lakefront. And now it's just execution, 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 and telling our story to the world that Cleveland is open and ready for business.
Great. Please join me in thanking Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So thank you, Mayor Bibb. Thank you, Baiju, for that conversation. We really appreciate it. Finally, I'd like to welcome to stage Congresswoman Shontel Brown and Congressman Max Miller. Congresswoman Brown joined Congress just a little over 2 years ago following a distinguished tenure on Cuyahoga County Council and within City of Warrensville Heights. Congressman Miller was a senior advisor to President Trump and spent 6 years in the Marine Corps. We thank you for your service. So, thank you both for being here today. We really appreciate it. I've been very much looking forward to this conversation, having worked pretty closely with both of you. And I want to start, we referenced that you're both early in your tenure within Congress, and just wanted to maybe give an opportunity to talk about what's most important as you begin your journey in Congress and what are your top priorities that you're working on. Maybe to go with seniority, I think you have it just by a little bit. We'll start with Congresswoman Brown.
It matters.
So I walked into a House agricultural meeting, right? On time, sorry, and she's older, more seniority. She walks in 15 minutes late, okay? And all of a sudden, she gets the first question. And I've been sitting there forever, all right? And then she looks in a room, Republicans, Democrats, all these legislators, and she says, easy, freshman. So I give you Shontel.
Thank you. So we do have fun, and that is an example of the bipartisanship. Some of the priorities for me as it relates to my district is expanding the opportunities naturally for workers, small businesses, and protecting some of the programs like SNAP. So just building on some of the great things that we've been able to accomplish is really been my focus, and those are the things that I am going to enjoy working with Max on.
Yeah, and I'm proud to say, when it comes to SNAP, Shontel
Check 1, 2.
and I sit on the agricultural committee. We've been very supportive of SNAP, and as the only Republican in the state of Ohio who is on the agricultural committee, I can say this, and I'm proud to say this, with 81% of it being SNAP, is that I'm already going to vote for it because it's too important to our farmers and to our ranchers in the state of Ohio. And a lot of people don't know this, but 1 in every 7 jobs in the state is in agribusiness. And how much that means to the economic revenue, especially in our district in the 7th, where you have corn, wheat, sorghum, and soybean that could be used in renewable energy subsidies that will help lower energy costs for every single American across the board. And so we've been working on that tremendously throughout this term.
Great. Thank you both for your remarks. We at the Greater Cleveland Partnership have been heavily involved advocating for NASA Glenn. It's been a top priority for us over many, many decades. You've both been very active supporters of it during your tenure in Congress. Can you talk to us a little bit more about why that is an important center and what it really means to our community and how you're trying to support that in Congress through your work?
Well, first of all, it provides 8,000 jobs, a little around 8,000 jobs, and a lot of that is also resulting in contracting, local contracts. And so it really sets itself up to be a STEM hub, not only in the Ohio region, but the entire country. And so those are the things that I'm excited about as it relates to us being able to work together on bipartisan issues. We've got tremendous opportunities around the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We've got tremendous opportunities as it relates to NASA, going back to that. I serve on the strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party Select, and so the GOP is very concerned about that, but that gives us an opportunity to elevate our competitive edge on the global stage as it relates to NASA. And then we've got CHIPS and Science Act, which we supported in a bipartisan way, and our entire delegation just last week wrote a letter to make sure that we can get additional funding to support the Intel project that's happening in a little bit south of here. And finally, as Max talked about, the Farm Bill, making sure that we are doing everything that we can in the Farm Bill to protect the farmers and support both farmers and consumers.
Congressman, I know NASA Glenn is largely in your district. Your thoughts on it?
Chantel nailed it. When it comes to public-private partnerships and the 8,000 people that the federal government employs within NASA is huge, but we can do so much more. And what I want to see with NASA, and we've had great conversations with NASA leadership and Dr. Kenyon, who is over there, about giving NASA program authority. There is a reason why Huntsville, Alabama has exploded in the way that they have. And yes, I know Senator Shelby had a lot to do with that as he took the lead and they got a good jump start on it. But here's what I see in NASA Glenn right now. NASA Glenn provides enough public-private partnerships to actually keep some of the private sector companies that we have afloat, especially over the 2 years in the pandemic that a lot of people don't know about. We have Blue Abyss that is coming right next to NASA Glenn. That is only the beginning of what NASA Glenn can turn into and have 10 to 20,000 jobs. I mean, they right now are working on nuclear fission and nuclear fusion that is going to take us far beyond the atmosphere into space that we never thought was imaginable. And I fundamentally believe that this is an untapped resource, and I'll close with this. Every major city that you have that has a robust airport. You know, New York's obviously 20 times the size, but LA, Miami, Chicago, I'm gonna go on and on. But when you land in these cities, and when you look at their airports, what do you see around these airports? You see infrastructure. You see businesses. You see people who are driven into that area to provide the economic revenue and business within the private sector. We have to continue to develop the land around NASA Glenn and Cleveland Hopkins Airport so we can attract other businesses to come here. Ohio should be the leader, not only in semiconductors, but with NASA. And we're going to do everything we can, being on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, to get that program authority so we can have the direct spend to actually help out Ohioans to make sure that that money goes in their pocket so that we can see the economic return on the back end.
Thank you, Congressman. You know, another good sign for our community in that discussion was just last week, Jim Free, the former center director for NASA Glenn, was elevated to the #3 position at NASA headquarters. I think that's a good sign for our community in terms of the leadership role that Clevelanders are playing within the broader agency. Switching for a moment, we've just averted another government shutdown. We have another CR or a laddered CR. Would like your thoughts on that, and also, you know, how we get out of this circumstance of maybe governing by crisis, and if there's room for bipartisanship within some of this decision making.
I will yield to Mr. Miller.
I will yield to Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Excuse me, this is a private event. We would ask that you excuse yourself. Excuse me, this is a private event. I appreciate your interest, but I would
Well, what I will say is that we do respect peaceful protests, right? And that we also are not supporters. No one here is a supporter of genocide. We have to come to the acceptance that this conflict was initiated by terrorists, the Hamas terrorists, and there are 239 hostages that we'd like to see free. And both myself and Max Miller support the right for Israel to defend itself, as well as the president, who has also made it a point to say, look, we need to take some humanitarian pauses so that we can get the aid to civilians, innocent civilians in Gaza whose lives have been lost, both Israeli and Palestinians.
Thank you. We are going. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you very much for your comments.
But this is what democracy looks like.
We hear your message, sir, and we respect it. Thank you.
We are going to attempt to move on with the program. We very much appreciate your comments thus far. We'll attempt to work back to the question that I was just on again. Congressman, I'm not sure if there's anything you need to add on that.
Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Free, free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine.
Well, Marty, I think the question that you asked was around the CR, and as it relates to the CR, as it relates to the chants that are being shouted in the audience, I think that we can also address the fact that we passed the CR because we wanted to avoid a government shutdown, but what we'd like to see moving forward is humanitarian aid for Israel, and again, the civilians who have lost their lives or who have been suffering through the Hamas terrorist attacks. Again, 239 people's lives have been lost, and that is not lost on us, and we do not support genocide. And while we may have disagreements with language but we do agree that, again, Israel has the right to defend itself. But the CR, the latter CR, it was passed to avoid a government shutdown because that does not help people, it does not put money back in people's wallets. What we'd like to see is funding for Israel, funding for Ukraine, and also for the efforts that President Biden proposed in October as it relates to dealing with domestic issues around child care and strengthening our borders. So those are the things that we'd like to see, that I'd like to see moving forward. But I will yield to my to my
well,
colleague,
I don't know.
Mr. Miller.
It seems as if the Republican conference hasn't been too much of a mess over the past couple of months, right? Couldn't find a speaker, delayed the appropriations process by a whopping 24 days, and now we're probably looking at an omnibus. But to directly answer your question, so I had always said that I would never vote to shut the government down, and I had taken a vote to increase the debt ceiling proudly. I had taken a vote for the 45-day clean CR that was put on the floor by Speaker McCarthy. The reason why I voted no on the laddered CR, and I want to be clear, I didn't want the government to shut down, but I want to address something. I'm sick and tired of gimmicks in Congress. And what I mean by that is, we have a new speaker, I'm going to give him a chance, but he put IRS cuts on an Israel supplemental. We have never put any cuts on any supplemental to any foreign country when we give aid. And now, because of that, we are going to get in the House a full supplemental, as the Congresswoman said, with Ukraine, Taiwan, humanitarian assistance to the Gazans, which will be put in there, and for our border. And so these things are going to come to a head, but I am not a fan of the laddered CR. I think it was a terrible idea. I want the government to remain open, but we should do it responsibly. Why not just pass a 60-day clean CR? Because in a month from now, Chantel and I are going to be on the House floor sweating bullets again because some of my colleagues on the far right want to play games. I'm sick of the games. I'm sick of the gimmicks. We have to work together as a country. We have to work together in bipartisanship. And the best part about it is all of you get to see that right here and right now. And that, I'll wrap up with this. What you see on TV and on the national news media, from Newsmax all the way to MSNBC, is trash. And I mean that completely. We have, there's 10% of Congress. I say 5% on my side, 5% on her side.
Maybe 7 on yours. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, here we go. All right, fine. Let's put it this way. If we're really going to call them out, it's the crazy 8 who kicked out Speaker McCarthy. They're the problem, hands down. But what you're seeing is that, that is effective. But we have had some wins in Congress. We have drafted legislation out of the Republican House that has passed the Democrat Senate. Actually, I think there's 5 pieces of legislation, if not a little bit more, that has hit the president's desk. So don't be so, undeterred that people like us can't come together, because what you see on TV is not what's happening in reality. People like Chantel and I get together every day to work on issues, and couldn't be any more happy, proud, and honored to respectfully disagree with each other, but come to a common conclusion for all of you in the country, regardless of political affiliation.
Thank you, Congresswoman, you mentioned the CHIPS Act earlier in your remarks, and there's been a lot of federal funding coming out, a lot around infrastructure, a lot around science and technology, a lot around workforce. How do we best position our community to compete with that, to bring home, you heard in your earlier panel discussion, how do we compete to bring home more than our fair share? I know you've both supported a lot of the grants and different opportunities coming out of Northeast Ohio, but what else can we do to make sure that we're well aligned to go seek federal resources?
Well, Marty, I should have started off with a big thank you for putting this on, because you have been a tremendous partner in making sure that we get those resources back into not only the 11th congressional district, but the entire state. So the partnership, the collaboration at the local, the state, and the county and federal level, when we're all working collaboratively, that sets us up for success. These agencies want to see broad buy-in, and that is how you get the durable support to get the resources into the state, but most specifically right here in the 11th congressional district.
Or the 7th.
But we understand collaboration, and that is key.
Any other comments you'd add on top of that?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, the question around how do we unfair share? How do we secure our unfair share for Northeast Ohio, the greater Cleveland area, in terms of federal funding opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, rely on people like myself and Chantel. I got to tell you, and I hate to say this, but I say it to everyone, I just don't know a better way, which we offer services you already pay for. And I hate to say it that way, but it's your taxpayer dollars. I mean, how many people in this room know that you can come to one of us, if you're a veteran or you know a veteran, that we can help with disability, that they deserve, that they fought for this country, or to get them an appointment at the VA. I'm proud to say that our office returned $4 million from the IRS back to constituents. I mean, these are services that we can cut through the fat for you. Even when we talk about H-2A and H-2B visas, if you have a landscaping company, if you're in agriculture, we can be helpful with those, cutting through the fat to make sure that you aren't short on labor. I mean, these are the things that we are constantly working on every single day, and I believe we're making really great progress working together on the same committee and just having a good relationship in general, but the future's bright.
So speaking of that, maybe final question as we work to our close here. Next year's an election year. It gets difficult to pass meaningful legislation. What is your hope for what we can accomplish next year in Congress or in the broader federal government to move our greater Cleveland forward?
Me personally, it's the divisiveness that we have within our country. I fundamentally believe politics over the last 6 years has gotten really ugly. And no one needs to break out a tiny violin for me. I asked for this. I worked very hard. I'm proud to be here. But in all seriousness, I mean, the divisiveness, the rhetoric, and I think that too many people within our country on both sides of the aisle and in the middle label people before we actually get to sit down with them and understand their policy positions and why they're doing it for the country. And I'll wrap up with this. You know, you would think in Congress that Republicans and Democrats would meet in the same rooms together, right? To work out issues. I mean, that's how it's done in the private sector, to negotiate, to see some type of compromise on how you can cut a deal. Sadly, that even doesn't happen with Republicans. And I'm sure maybe, I don't want to speculate, but maybe it doesn't happen with Democrats either. And,
we're good.
Oh, here we go. It's true, they have far less problems than us. I will not deny. Good slam. But you know, it's the truth. Look, I'll let you take it from here. But you know, if more of us just got together in rooms, you would find that Republicans and Democrats are probably at like a 70% common ground, and that is the most frustrating and devastating thing for me as a freshman in Congress, is to watch that. But you have to have people who are willing to engage in those conversations, and unfortunately we have several on wherever, that on both sides, that just don't want to understand, and that is the most frustrating thing. So I'll end it with that, and just thank you all so much. Shanta.
Congresswoman, any final thoughts?
So I think my hopes for coming into next year is just getting the budget process done. I'm looking forward to working on the Farm Bill. One of the things that did come out of the CR was an extension for a year, so we've got a little bit more time to work on that, so that's a plus. And hopefully we will get the dysfunction out of our system and be able to work more collaboratively.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Always good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here. So, thank you again, folks, for joining us today. Finally, before we close out this session, I want to take just a moment to thank our sponsors. They've been presented on our stage today. Obviously, Cleveland Cliffs, Bank of America, Bedrock, Cleveland Magazine, the Cleveland Guardians, Cuyahoga Community College, Minutemen, PNC Bank, and the Boler College of Business at John Carroll University. I'm the last thing standing between you and the reception and the drinks in the lobby, but just wanted to thank you very much. I want to thank our guest speakers, and have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much.